From what you tell me, you have only a few thousand francs left, and the balance of your royalties for Ulysses will barely cover your rent on the 15th. You will get a big price for the manuscript of Dubliners, but I imagine that Rosenbach will pay only a small part of the sum down. The rest he will settle up later. Because you don't save. You don't know yet what money is. Money's power. When you've lived as long as I have, I know, if youth but knew. But what does Shakespeare say? A poet, yes, but an Englishman too. Do you know what the pride of the English is? Do you know what it is, the proudest word you will ever hear come from an Englishman's mouth?
The sea's ruler, his sea-cold eyes looked empty on the empty bay. It seems history is to blame, on me and on my words unhating.
Kidneys were in his mind as he moved about the kitchen softly, writing her breakfast things on the humpy tray. Gellet light and air were in the kitchen, but out of doors, gentle summer morning everywhere made him feel a bit peckish. The coals were reddening.
Another slice of bread and butter, 3, 4, right. She didn't like her plate full. Right.
He turned from the tray, lifted the kettle off the hob, and set it sideways on the fire. It sat there, dull and squat. Its spout stuck out.
Cup of tea soon? Good, mouth dry.
The cat walked stiffly round a leg of the table with tail on high.
Oh, there you are,
Mr. Bloom said, turning from the fire. The cat mewed in answer and stalked again stiffly round a leg of the table, mewing.
Just how she stalks over my writing table. Scratch my head.
Seymour's back in town. Chuck medicine, going in for the army.
Ah, go to God.
Going over next week to Stew. You know that red Carlisle girl, Lily?
Yes.
Spooning with him last night on the pier. Father is rattled with money.
Is she up the pole?
Well, you better ask Seymour that.
Seymour, a bleeding officer.
Was the development really so different? And why couldn't they see across this chasm over time? Why don't you take a shot at that?
I always think that Boston is different. That's a nice, safe statement to make, probably, in a room full of Boston people. But the establishment in Boston, the Brahmin establishment, was so entrenched that I think they presented a bigger obstacle for immigrant groups to get around.
But the Jews sent their children immediately to the public schools, and the Irish youngsters went to the parochial schools. Now, what difference that made is probably significant.
Yeah, I do think that compared to a number of cities, the Irish have held on to power here longer than in other places. I mean, this is the only city that I know of where there's still an Irish organized crime group, right? It's
Maybe.
moved to Somerville. It's not in Boston anymore, but
Maybe it's right.
you're supposed to get out of the way. You're supposed to. The Irish were supposed to turn it over to the Jews, who turned it over to the African Americans, who are now handing it over to the Hispanics in most other cities.
Talk about that. You were members listening to Father Coughlin.
I remember hearing on Sunday afternoon.
What was it like to live in a Jewish home and hear this kind of vituperation coming out?
Well, people were frightened. I think there was a real fear because he was vicious in the way he attacked the Jews.
It's little known, but O'Connell was one of the first American Catholic bishops to denounce Father Coughlin very early on.
So anyhow, in came John Weiss Nolan and Lenihan with him, with a face on him as long as a late breakfast.
Well, what's the latest from the scene of action? What did those tinkers in City Hall at their caucus meeting decide about the Irish language? It's on the march. To hell with the bloody, brutal Sacanocs and their patois.
Because he couldn't resist the sight of the wondrous revealment, half offered like those skirt dancers behaving so immodest before gentlemen, looking, and he kept on looking. She would fain have cried to him, lay chokingly, held out her snowy, slender arms to him.
Still, he had the manners not to wake me. What do they find to gabber about all night, squandering money and getting drunker and drunker? Couldn't they drink water? Then he starts giving us his orders for eggs and tea and thinned and hattie and hot buttered toast. I suppose we'll have him sitting up like the king of the country, pumping the wrong end of the spoon up and down in his egg, wherever he learned that from. All those queer little streets, and the pink and blue and yellow houses, and the rose gardens, and the jessamine and geraniums and cactuses. And Gibraltar as a girl, when I was a flower of the mountain, yes. When I put the rose in my hair like the Andalusian girls used, or shall I wear red? Yes. And how he kissed me under the Moorish wall, and I thought, well as well him and any other. And then I asked him with my eyes to ask again. Yes. And then he asked me, would I? Yes, to say yes, my mountain flower. And first I put my arms around him, yes, and drew him down to me so he could feel my breasts, all perfume. Yes. And his heart was going like mad. And yes, I said, yes, I will. Yes.